It's 2010, and I just finished with school. Father would let me play video games, mostly Disney and Looney Tunes kids games. But this time something changed. I sat on the computer and saw the game he's been playing for the past weeks, and it was Divinity 2, Igor Draconis. I hovered my mouse over it, then asked, "Father, can I play this game?" He nodded with a smile. I turned on the game and started playing one of his early saves, still in Broken Valley. I started climbing the rocks on the waterfall until I hit an invisible wall. "Why can't I go there?" I asked. "Because they didn't make anything past that point. The world is made within those walls," Father said. "Once I grow up, I'm gonna make a world past those walls." Before I even finished the game, I got to the next year of school, where we got basics of computer handling, and where I found out about programming. Because of that game, learning that and becoming a game developer became my life goal. Now that the personal attachment is out of the way, I wanted to talk about Larian, Divinity, and their recent success with Baldur's Gate 3. Before I was even born, they were a small studio, with one game at the time, LAD Wars, which I'm not here to talk about. Until 2002, when after years of trouble they released their first video game in their now large IP, Divinity. It was supposed to be called The Lady, the Mage and the Knight, but the publishers at the time demanded it was called differently, and so they came up with Divinity. It was an isometric, Diablo-like CRPG, with action combat and large worlds to explore. The game didn't really become all that famous, very few people knew about it, but it was still a hidden gem amongst other games. It wouldn't be until 2019 that I first played that game, and to be honest, I think it is heavily underrated. The combat is fun yet difficult, the story is entertaining, and the power scaling felt satisfying, even though it came out 2 months after I was born. I still really loved it, especially seeing the early writing of the studio we all love in this day and age. But it didn't come without its problems. Even though the game was reviewed well, they mostly didn't get any money from it. And after attempting to make another Divinity game, Beyond Divinity, they didn't receive enough money to continue working on the franchise, so they were forced to make smaller educational games for kids to stay in business. Around 2008, they gave the franchise another go, trying to make a third-person action RPG called Divinity 2 Igor Draconis, a direct sequel to the mainline game Divinity. They had a new publisher and more enthusiasm than ever. The game would have you play as a human that can turn into a dragon in a large open-world RPG setting, and the story would be picking up sometime after the first game. Problem was, the financial crisis hit in 2008, and publisher needed money fast, and they also wanted the game to work on the Xbox, which further gave it limitations. In January 2010, the game came out. Not as polished as it was supposed to be, with a lot of features being cut, including a multiplayer co-op. The first few months of the game were not all that good. The game was unbalanced, corners were cut, and some assets weren't placed right at all. Some are still not fixed to this day, but with updates and even a DLC called Flames of Vengeance, the game ended up looking pretty good. The story had wild plot twists, wacky side missions which had choices that would impact the game world, and then later in the DLC, which was much more polished, the writing we all know and love from Larian emerged. As a kid, I was obsessed with the game. I completed it so many times I remembered the base game completely, every side quest and every outcome. I replayed it every year at least once, and it was that game that put me on the path of learning programming. My neighbors and I were talking about it non-stop. It was the theme for months to come, until Skyrim came out. It was also a game I and many of my friends learned English on, since it wasn't my first language. Of course, even with the game looking good at the end, there were still problems. the devs didn't receive any money. After another release in 2013, Divinity, Dragon Commander, the studio was broke, on the verge of collapse. However, a website called Kickstarter at the time became famous, and Sven couldn't let that chance pass. He put all his mortgage money into creating something they could show on Kickstarter, and then decided that they would be their own publishers this time. In June 2014, after a successful Kickstarter campaign, they made a game called Divinity Original Sin, a spin-off to the mainline games, set years before Divine Divinity. It was a turn-based CRPG, with a few large open worlds that you can explore and do missions in, with the quests now having even more impact on the main story than ever before. Of course, without publisher problems from before, and with more freedom than ever. They created a game that actually earned them enough money to create another one. The goal this time was to make something they dreamed about, a Baldur's Gate game. They called the owner of the IP and had a meeting where they discussed making a Baldur's Gate game. And of course they were denied in the worst possible fashion. Being denied, they started working on another Divinity game called Divinity Original Sin 2. They started another Kickstarter campaign and went to work. In September 2017, they released the best game they have ever made at the time, and it blew both the franchise and the studio into something larger. The game was more polished, companions more immersive, story more intriguing, and gameplay much better. One would say that they finally made a game they desired since 1997, almost 20 years earlier. It sold really well and was praised for using the old CRPG formula to create something new and innovative. Fans of the genre saw it as something that would revive it. Fans of the franchise saw it as an introduction to a long-lasting series of great games. But nobody saw what was coming next. Now I'll shift to a more personal story again, because this is what drove me to make this video. In 2020, I just finished another playthrough of Divine Divinity and Divinity Original Sin 2, and was starting another playthrough of Divinity Original Sin 1 for God knows which time, when my sister stumbled upon something. With no ads, no trailer, just a random Larian game called Baldur's Gate 3 on early access. Now, remembering all the releases from 2017 to 2020, I saw the large IP title and thought, this looks like another apology letter speedrun. My thought was, without knowing about the history of Larians with that IP, that they would use the IP for a quick cash grab and continue working on something better, or that the success of Divinity made them too high and mighty for their own good. But my sister bought the early access and slowly played it and replayed the game. I'd see some scenes or fights she had in the game and I wasn't that interested, but I was waiting patiently. After some time, it started to look more and more like a game I and many others would enjoy playing, and we even got the first release date at some point. At this point, I finished Original Sin 2, I bought all Divinity games except Dragon Commander, and I patiently waited for it, expecting it to be another banger along with its main competitor that year, Starfield. The year was looking very good. After the trailer got out and some mechanics of both games were discussed on the internet, it looked like the Game of the Year title would slip again from the hands of Larian, since they were nowhere near as large as Bethesda, and hearing how it might even be delayed because Microsoft and Xbox were making problems with the release in form of mandatory mechanics and whatnot, it wasn't looking good. We were all both angry at Microsoft and Bethesda, but also disappointed in what's to come. From our point of view, it was looking like Microsoft was trying to steal the title of Game of the Year from Larian. Then, what everyone thought would be the final nail in the coffin happened. Bethesda announced the release date of Starfield literally the same day as Baldur's Gate 3. We were all disappointed, but how did Larian react? They released the full version of the game months earlier. None of us knew what to expect. Is it finished? Did Larian get screwed over by the publishers again? Well, nonetheless, I bought the game and started playing. After what felt like minutes, I exited the game, looked at the clock, and I've spent 6 hours in the game. I logged into Reddit, and it was taken over by Baldur's Gate 3. I turned on YouTube, and my favorite content creators were playing it. Instagram was filled with funny compilations. It looked like the studio we followed for 13 years was finally recognized by everyone else. It was a hot topic for months, and even when Starfield came up, nobody paid attention to it. Everyone was hyper-focused on Baldur's Gate 3 and its content. People were hating on it because it wasn't action-packed like Spider-Man 2, and then when they tried it out, they would end up loving it. It was everything we wanted from the studio since 2010, and others from 2002. When the Game of the Year contest started, we all knew what was gonna happen. The game swept the floor and won every category they were nominated in, and even the grand Game of the Year award. And then Sven gave the speech we all wanted to hear. It was a rare moment where gamers won the Game of the Year awards. After so many years of being hurt by sloppy and greedy video games made by studios that only wanted money, gamers finally got the Game of the Year award. Now, what I said in this video might not be 100% accurate. It might not be as coherent as I wanted it to be, but it's my first video I ever made for this channel, and I wanted to make it not because I wanted to farm views or subs or anything. I wanted to make it in case someone from Larian sees this. Your games made my childhood dream, and they educated me in a language I would go on to use my whole career. You brought me joy and comfort since elementary school, all the way to college. After countless hours in Divinity 2, Igor Draconis, Original Sin, and now Baldur's Gate 3, I could say that your games brought me up since childhood. I feel proud to say this. Larian was always my favorite studio, and Divinity 2, Igor Draconis was always my favorite game. I'm proud to say that the first game I made my girlfriend play was Baldur's Gate 3. It's also made by you. I feel like as I grew up with this studio, and with the success of Baldur's Gate 3, I feel like we both grew up well. Like when a friend finally graduates, or gets a job that they always wanted. I hope I will continue to feel this way in the future and continue to grow alongside the studio as a better person. You were definitely a big part of my life. This last part is the hardest to voice, since when I wrote this, I was tearing up, and when voicing this I still am. But I just wanted to say thank you for the great games that we enjoy and generations will after us. Thank you for the moments we will cherish our whole lives. Thank you for the struggle you put into making our lives at least a little bit better. Thank you for showing the world that there are still people who care about the games they create. I think if my younger self had a chance, he would still say the same. Thank you for everything, Larian Studios. With love, Delayuda. Out.